Hi, Jim Tressel here, and welcome to our Memorial Day episode of It's All About the Team. And we couldn't have a better guest than the one we have today, General Maryanne Miller. Now, I have to ask you at the outset, I've called you General Miller, and I know you've retired. Do I have the license to call you Maryanne, or what would you prefer?
It's Maryanne.
It's Maryanne.
Yeah. And for you, Coach, President?
Coach is probably what I did longer.
Okay.
And the jury's still out on how I did as a president. So let's go with Coach, and couldn't be more excited for this episode. And it's a special day, Memorial Day, and I know you spent a lot of Memorial Days with troops and out leading, and talk with us a little bit about how special this day is.
So special. I wanted to wear my uniform to honor the fallen. Our hearts go out to the men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And they continue to go out and are united with the families. The families are still mourning. That's not something you get over. That's something that you, each year, remember everything and remember the journey of your daughter or son, or husband and wife who's lost their life serving this country. But our hearts are united with theirs. I know yours are. You were my honorary commander, and so you spent, years beside me, walking through our Air Force, seeing everything that there was to see out there, spending time with our airmen and their families. So you understand the sacrifice that is made by those men and women who have served this country. So I wanted to wear the uniform today to honor them and to just thank the families, the Gold Star families out there. Our hearts are with yours. Thank you.
We did something at the Woody Hayes Center when we were here, that we had a little block O of every Buckeye that ever served.
Awesome.
And all the branches. And in fact, there was a block O for my dad, who only spent one spring here as a spring football player and then enlisted to go into World War II, but including the likes of Paul Brown and so many. And we wanted our young people to remember, because so often, out of sight, out of mind, not understanding. We talked often, how did the football program get built, and all the heroes, the Archie Griffins and the Jack Tatums, but how about the country? That got built, and so Memorial Day and Veterans Day and those kinds of things, we wanted to be real to our students, and hopefully they pass that along to their students. And we used to tease them on Labor Day, because we were always in preseason camp, that Labor Day isn't a day off. Labor is a day that we labor, and that we're honoring the people that labored, that built this great nation. But so you came here to play softball, catcher, played volleyball on scholarship, ROTC, wanted to be a great student. That's a lot.
It's a lot to juggle.
A lot to juggle. And then you started that march through all the experiences, and that's a lot of teams you were on. Softball teams, volleyball teams, ROTC cadres, and then on through. Talk us a little bit about your path and the teams and what made them special and what you learned about team.
I think the biggest team that I honor the most is my family. We were a team. There were 8 of us. It wasn't a small group of people, 6 children. Mom and Dad grew up in Hilliard. So you learn a lot. My parents were very devout in their faith. We grew up in the faith. So we had a strong core, a strong foundation of what it means to sacrifice, of what it means to give, of what it means to, give up your portion for the others, and teach the little ones how it goes, right?
Where were you in the?
So I was 2. So I have an older sister, Peg. Peg went to Ohio State here on a full athletic scholarship also. She was a year older than me, then 4 boys.
Wow.
4 boys. So very proud of them all today. My full-time job now in retirement is taking care of my dad, the team leader of our family, and he's got Alzheimer's. He's 93 years old. So, and that foundation that my mom and dad set for us as children was so precious that even today, as I'm here, my sister's with my dad. My 4 brothers I'm going to be leaving to go to an event in June for a week, and they are going to cover. The 4 boys are going to cover for Dad, right?
Takes 4 boys to do what one girl can do.
But Mom would be proud. So from the very beginning, you begin to see what does it mean to sacrifice. Because being a part of a team, it's about sacrifice. Being a part of a team, it's not about solo. It's about everyone else.
Right.
It's always about the others, right? So, so being on teams was easy. It was easy. Understanding how to lift up everyone else on the team. Understand what does it mean to know each individual on the team and the God-given talents that each one of them have, and how do you pull that out? How do you pull that out? And I learned that at home. How do you correct the brother, right, and get him on the right track so that he can be who God created him to be. So it's all about that. We're all created for greatness. We're all magnanimous if we really dig down in deep. We're all that same way. So being on a team was natural. Being alone, being a single sport, playing, if I ever, I love tennis, but I couldn't see myself playing a sport that was, a solo, all by yourself. There's so much more. You grow more, you grow quickly, you learn to share, you learn to sacrifice, just all the things that come with learning to be a part of a team. So it started at the family, then, for each sport, it's different. Each sport is different. Each sport has their culture. Coming into Air Force ROTC, that was awesome because I was brought to this building I would sit next to this guy working out every day. As an athlete, you work out all the time. And I'd always sit next in this one, we'd be pumping weights, and this guy always sat next to me, and he had super short hair. And he would talk to me, what are you going to do in school? Well, I want to be a lawyer. Well, why don't you come and be a lawyer in the Air Force? He was a cadet. So we came over here one day. We walked all the way to the top floor. And once I met those folks, I thought, these are my people. And what do I mean by that? They understand team. They understand a mission. They understand a commitment to a mission. They understand our job is to grow as human beings. It's not to sit on the couch and just wither away. Our job is to contribute to the team, to our growth, to build character, all these things. Those cadets had it. And I thought, these are my people.
And that was a hard time because we were coming out of the Vietnam times, which I suppose after World War II there was a little bit more celebration of the impact they made and the sacrifice. But I grew up a little bit before you. I was in school from 71 to 75, so that was right in the midst of the Vietnam era, and then you were here after that. So that had to be a little different experience.
It was. I was here 77 to 81, and walking across the campus in your ROTC uniform, you're only 5 years away from that experience of Vietnam. This country had not, this country did not receive the Vietnam veterans back in the proper way. And the country knows that. The country has since made up for that in the wars that followed. But we still need to make reparations in our hearts and in our minds for those that came back. And every time I talk to veterans, and I specifically recognize the Vietnam veterans and call them out, and it's very emotional for them. And I said, I apologize for our country, for the way we accepted you back and received you back. It was not with honor, and it was not with respect. So spent a lot of time with that. So that was still, that aura was still kind of around the university back then. So we were made fun of walking across. Hut 2, 3, 4. People would lay down in front of you like you killed them. I mean, it was ridiculous. So the professor of aerospace studies, we were telling him all these stories, and he says, hey, why don't you just carry your uniform or leave it in the locker room here, and then just change when you get here. And then we'll drill in the parking lot. We'll do all the things that we normally do. But let's not create an issue. Let's go ahead and do that. So it was unique.
But you got that group of people that really became close, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just a special special group of people. Just like any culture, the Air Force is a culture, the Army's a culture. All the services have their unique culture, but yet we all combine into just understanding what it means to contribute and be a part of a team. And make
So we had all the branches in this building. We're seated here in the Military Science Building on the campus of Ohio State University,
Right.
built in 1952. I asked someone coming in, I said, well, this building looks kind of old. What year was it built? And they said 52. I said, well, that's when I was born. So it is old.
Yeah.
So you had all your branches. Was there much interaction between branches? Was there much difference in how the different branches taught team?
The difference in the sense of the history and the heritage that you had to lean on. For example, the Army, hundreds of years. The Navy, hundreds of years, right? When you look at the Air Force back then, I mean, we are now just 76 years old. Young service. So we're finding ourselves. We're the aviation service, later to become air and space.
Yeah.
Later to become just air. There's now Space Command. So the Air Force is always evaluating, always, every service is, but there's so much history and heritage and just core foundational functions that the Army does, that the Navy doesn't do, that the Air Force doesn't do, but yet there's some functions that we all do. We all have an aviation department. So each culture, I would say the cultures are not necessarily too different amongst the services, but cultures are different within your specialty. An Air Force pilot, there's a certain culture with an Air Force, being an Air Force pilot. There's a certain culture being a medical doctor. There's a certain culture being a mechanic, being on the logistics side of things. So there's a little bit of culture difference within that, because you have to raise those troops, those airmen, within that specialty.
So why did you choose the Air Force as the branch? Once you came over and said, I want to be a part of a team.
We just walked to the top floor. He was Air Force, and we just walked to the top floor, and I found myself there.
Okay.
There's really no rhyme or reason.
So it could have been any.
Yeah, and I really didn't want to fly. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then as I got into all those classes, I thought, well, I don't think this is really me, sitting in an office doing this. I'm more active. I need to be out there, so I need to figure out what this is. And so the Air Force, at the time, all the ROTC units across the country were selecting 10 women across the country to go to pilot training. The detachment commander came to me and said, we want to submit your name. And I said, I'm not going to be able to compete. My grade point will not compete with 4.0 engineering students. I was a non-technical major, criminology, criminal justice, sociology. I said, I don't have a chance, but if you want to put the package together, I'll help you. We'll do this together, but I think we're wasting our time. And he says, we're doing it anyway. So they submitted it, and I got it. And I remember walking over to the St. John's Arena, picking up the payphone at the time, calling Mom saying, I got selected. And she said, you told me they wouldn't pick you. Because I thought, they're not going to pick me.
Wow.
But they did. So, it's... looking back at it, it was all predetermined that I'd be sitting here in this uniform one day. I mean, I tried to get out of the Air Force 4 times, and I was pulled back each time. The intent was not to get out of the Air Force. The intent was to stay in, contribute. This is the talents that you have, and this is how I'm going to use you to make the world a better place and to make people better.
So you were commissioned and went where?
I was commissioned and went to pilot training in Arizona, and did that for a year. Pilot training's a year long, and then the first 10, I was 72 in my class. The first 10 get whatever airplane they want, wherever they want it. I was number 10 in the class, so they take the next 10 to 12 people and make them instructor pilots. So I was pulled back as an instructor, which is what I wanted to do anyway. So I taught men and women how to fly. Few women. We had usually one a class. So I taught folks how to fly for 4 years, and then they said, what airplane, what base? And I asked for a 141 to McCord, which is up in Seattle. The purpose of that was to see the world, fly a crew airplane, see the world. And then it's airplane upon airplane. I flew 8 different airplanes within the Air Force. Actually got out of the active component to fly float planes for Washington State Department of Fisheries, which was my goal. So I flew float planes for a while for the governor. Flew the governor around, landed on all the estuaries and waterways up in Seattle, and then realized there's really nowhere to go with this. So I came into the reserves full time, and then from then on, I stayed. I wasn't part-time in the reserves ever, except for like 2 years. I was in the reserve, but I was full-time. So I can compete with the active duty components that I left. I could compete with them all the way because I was full-time within the Air Force Reserve. So when it came time for promotions, my resume looked like theirs. Many reservists don't have the same resume as an active component member because they're part-time. They got a full-time job somewhere else. They come in on the weekends. They come in and do much more than weekends. They come in and serve this great nation. So their resumes don't look like an active duty resume who does it full-time. Mine did. So consequently, I was able to, when it came promotion board time, promoted, selected, all those things that go with it. So.
Well, speaking of the reservists, that's where I got to meet you, was at the 910th Air Wing up in Vienna, Ohio. And I didn't know much about reservists. I was a mega fan of the branches of the military. One of the things in my life I have felt as a vacuum is that I didn't serve. So I was going to make sure any way I could help. But I didn't know much about the reservists. So when I got the chance to learn more about it, and you talk about building a team, what amazed me was the employers had to be a part of the team because they had to allow the reservists to miss time for what they were trying to accomplish. And then, of course, the instructors and the people at the base. And I was amazed at how much of the flying load that our reservists did. Was that a hard thing, building a team when it was, you had to have so many components?
It was, what's awesome about the military, any service, any of the services, is that we spend all our time training you for that day we don't want to happen. So you can take a reservist, an active duty, a guardsman, in any service, and we've trained them in that specialty, so you can sub them in, right? So we've built our Defense Department based on that. There's a full-time force and a part-time force. And the part-time force, years ago in Korea, during the Korean years, the part-time force was just a part-time force. The Gulf War changed all of that. The Gulf War changed all of it. So all the part-time Guard and Reserve members after the Gulf War have contributed so much because the active duty numbers, because of budgetary constrictions, we would shrink the active duty. Well, once you start doing that, the missions, you're not shrinking the mission at all. In fact, the mission grows. Every year the mission grows because of all the hotspots around the world. So you're going to fill it. So we are requiring much more of our Guard and Reserve to fill those positions. So we've created a deployment cycle that we are still working through and changing it even today. How do we make sure that the requirements across the globe are covered, whether it be part-time or full-time? It doesn't matter. An airman's an airman's an airman, right? The reservist and guardsmen don't have the day-to-day repetition that the active component has in their specialty. So when we bring an active or a guardsman into a specialty in the very beginning, we just load them up. Instead of being 3 months long, we'll make it a year long. So we're going to give it all up front. So go to your employer and tell them you're going to be doing this for a year, because we've got to get them up on the step. Readiness is readiness. A readiness for a guardsman, a reservist, or an active component has to be the same. The requirements of a reserve pilot or guard pilot are the same as an active component pilot. You need so many takeoffs and landings. You need so many approaches. You need so many, intercepts. You need so many bomb runs. It's all the same, because we have to have. You got to be able to sub in whoever you need to sub in, right?
So how many reservists are there in the Air Force?
68,000 reservists.
And how many active?
Active right now. Let's see, over 300,000.
And then how many guardsmen?
Guardsmen, there are roughly, I think, 90,000 now.
So you have all those.
And that's Air Force.
Yeah, that's Air Force.
That's
so
Air
you have
Force.
all those different people from a different. And then how many civilians work in and around this
Civilians
team?
are a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
Civilians are woven into everything we do.
Right.
So when you look at a team within the Air Force, you can be in a meeting and you don't know who's full-time, who's part-time. You can recognize the civilians only because they're wearing civilian clothes. But you've got a woven team together of all people who have grown up around the culture, within the culture of the Air Force, and understand what the mission is.
So as you're building the leadership of your team, you're kind of pigeonholed into promoting from within in some ways, because you're obviously not the civilians and so forth. And I know you have shorter stays as you're building a team. As a coach, I was here 10 years at Ohio State, 15 at Youngstown State. What was your longest position of leadership?
In the reserves, you stayed longer.
Oh, do you?
You may
Okay.
stay 3 years, you may stay 4 years.
But that's
in a
not
position.
that long, really, to build a team.
That's not that long.
Yeah.
That's not that long. Now, some of the other specialties, you may stay 10 years. In some of the guard positions, you may stay longer. State positions, the Guard has state positions and federal positions. The reserves, they're all federal positions.
So what's the magic to building a team with all those people coming from a different place?
The magic is making sure that the way we train them is the same. When you look at a reserve airman, a guard airman, an active duty airman, and you look at their specialty code, what do? A pilot, for example, a cargo pilot. You should be able to look at where what rank is, what their rank is, and know that their experience, that what they're able to do for the mission will be the same. The repetitions may not be as much on the part-time force, right? But so it all goes back to training. It all goes back to training. And I'm speaking for the Air Force. When you look at the Army Reserve, a tank driver, you're not going to drive a tank. Pilots, we fly once a week. We'll fly, at least once a month, sometimes once a week, depending on what airplane you're flying. Think about an Army tank driver. You're not touching that thing but every 6 months, right? Right? So there's uniquenesses. As I said before, it's about the specialty. Within your specialty, how do you get that airman, that troop, that sailor? Within your specialty, how do you get them to their maximum efficiency in their training? That's our whole goal all the time. Readiness, readiness, readiness. Do we have enough money to get to the readiness level that we need? Are we getting enough? Do we have enough fuel to be able to fly all the missions that we fly? Sometimes at the end of the fiscal year, you may have to back down on the flying schedule, right? Because you're running out of money. It's very interesting.
So the young people that come to be a part of the team, do you feel as if they come in with the basic understanding of what being a part of a team is, or is there a way that you feel like you have to help them understand it?
They need to understand it. They come in, the generations that we are raising now in this country are pretty much focused within. They want to make a difference. They want a reason to believe. They're amazing young people, But social media has raised some of our children. And when you think about that, that's not what we really want to have happen. But that's what's happening. So when you look at devices, it's all about me. It's all about me. So we really have to break that down. We really have to say, no, it's all about the other person. God gave you two eyes to look out, not your eyes don't look back at you. Your eyes look out so that you can make an impact, so that you can see what the issues are, and you can contribute and make it better. So I would always talk to my young airmen, and I know other leaders would too, about you've first got to know yourself. You've got to know that you're built for greatness. It's within you. You may not realize it. You may not think so. Your background may have brought you to a point where you don't feel valued. You're not loved at home, right? So when we get these airmen in, we don't know where they've come from. We don't know what's happened under that roof as they've grown up. So we've got to get to the heart of the matter, and the heart of the matter is their heart. You know, when you can reach a person's heart, you can shape them. You can help them shape themselves, and you can get them in the right direction. And you can tell them it's not about you; it's about everyone that you're surrounded by. You know, you have a mission. We have a mission to complete, whatever that mission is, whatever service, whatever company, whatever you're doing. You have a mission as being a part of an organization.
And we talk about it every day. That was the thing that was so much fun in coaching, was we talked about the team every day. And that's why we've been excited about creating this podcast of It's All About the Team, so that there can be more conversation, sometimes out of sight, out of mind. And two quick questions. One, because of getting connected with our ROTC here at Ohio State and then at Youngstown State, I had a chance to go on a little mission to visit the troops. So I got to fly in a KC-135, okay? And then when we were in theater in Iraq, we got to fly in C-130s. So that's the only two planes I know. So what are the planes that you flew?
Started out in a T-37, so a pilot training back then, it's different now, but back then you flew two airplanes. You flew T-37, which is a side-by-side jet, and then the T-38, which is the supersonic tandem. Instructor sits in the back, student sits in the front. So flew that for a year and then came back and then taught in the tandem. You know, so you're taking someone off the street who has about 10 hours of flying time under their belt, and you're putting a parachute on their back, a helmet on their head, and you're sitting them in a jet. And right off the bat, you know, you're teaching these guys how to fly with 10 hours of flying time under their belt. So I did that for a year, and then, as I said, moved on to the C-141, then moved on to the C-5.
C-5 is that huge one?
C-5 is the largest airplane in the world.
Yeah.
Flew the C-5 actually during the Iraq War. That thing can haul. We can move a lot of things. After the C-5, I flew the C-9 and the C-40, which are blue and white airplanes. So we would fly the First Lady around, Laura Bush. Flew her around a lot. Flew Congress around and cabinet members around. And then flew the KC-10 and the C-17, so 8 different airplanes.
So Iraq, since I had a chance to be there, there was a good Ohio State man that was in charge of the joint base, Balad Joint Base, and he had come here to study soil because of after the Vietnam War, where they couldn't penetrate some of the, and Sal was his first name, I'm drawing a blank, but as you went into that Balad Joint Base with 4,000 some folks, there was a big block O there. You know, he was going to make sure that his Buckeyes were, and you know, so we got to be at Camp Victory, Baghdad. We got to be at Balad Joint Base, and we got to be at Incirlik up in Turkey, Kuwait. But probably the highlight of our trip, honestly, was Djibouti.
Oh, wow, yeah.
In Africa.
Yeah.
It was incredible what service that those folks were doing for that whole northern Africa and the Straits. And in fact, I remember General Odierno. Remember General Odierno? Yeah. We were sitting in his office in Baghdad, and he said, you know, there's 5 of us coaches. And he said, coaches, we're happy that you're willing to go over to Djibouti, you know, when the entertainers come and so forth. A lot of them would rather not go to Djibouti. And we were like, you know, we just got an itinerary. We didn't ask to, you know, we didn't give approval, you know. And we said, well, why is Djibouti so important? He said, we learned 20-some years ago that maybe the future of the world is going to be based upon that region and how it's protected and safe, and it was a thrill.
It's true.
Now, that was the hottest place I've ever been. Hey, teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. So you became a reservist. My second question, you became a reservist and started getting different responsibilities as you moved up. Share with the viewers and listeners the different kinds of teams. You go from this group team and you get different teams. Share a little bit about the nuances of with all the different assignments and teams you had to build.
Yeah, building a team is the best thing you could ever do in life, and I know you agree.
Yep.
It's a responsibility that I don't think everyone takes seriously. You need to take it seriously. But the level of teams, the teams are administrative teams. You are surrounded by layers of teams, particularly at the 4-star level. And you learn about those layers as you grow up through the system. As you become a commander for the first time, you learn about the teams that support you. You learn about, are they functional? How did they? You look at the teams and you look for the gaps. I think that's the first thing that I would say as I'm building teams. I would come in and assess the individuals per se, and then how do they work together as a team. And you need to know what your gaps are in your team. What are you not getting after? So when you come to, and you know all this, all the experiences you have with this, but filling your gaps are important. So the first chance you get to fill a gap with the right person, you need to do that. You need to assess and sometimes move people out that just don't fit in the team. But you learn all about teams as you grow up. You learn all the supporting layers. When you become a 4-star, you have layers upon layers upon layers of teams and functions and administrative and mission and special mission and all these different things. And your responsibility as young officers is to learn all about that and to as you go through your career, to build your character, to understand your weaknesses, understand how do you address your weaknesses, how do you try to avoid them, so that you can then help your team through that. But filling gaps, critical right off the bat. As you go through, you understand that to support commanders, to support the mission, particularly on a global scale, the teams have to work together. So I've got a global operating center that watches 1,100 flights. There's 1,100 airplanes in Air Mobility Command. We monitor every single flight from takeoff to landing.
And that's the one at Scott?
That's the one at Scott.
Right.
So for every minute, used to be every 90 seconds, now it's every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes of every hour of every day, there's an airplane taking off or landing around the world. We monitor that. So you've got that group of people doing their thing. You've got an aeromedical aspect that connects in with that. You've got a logistics aspect that connects in with that. Because when a plane breaks, you got to go to the logisticians to fix it as fast as you can. Do we send a part? Do we send another airplane? Do we move? So all these different mechanics that are working to support a global mission around the world. So you've got to make sure that young airmen and young soldiers, whatever service that you are in, understand the layers of their service and how this all works together. So I would spend a lot of time first with teams understanding the gaps I needed to fill and how do I correct that quickly and get us on the path that we need to go. Then I would zero in on the members themselves. How are there gaps within them? Is their temperament such that they can't control their temper? Is their temperament such that they're more sanguine, they're more, hey, let's just get along to go along kind of thing. You've got to understand the individual members that you have, because if you have all people who are driven, you're going to miss taking care of people. But in war, you want that. You want the driving force. But Eisenhower is a wonderful example. He was a cleric. I'm a cleric. I focus, let's get the mission done. Everything's about the mission. Everything's about doing it right. If we're not doing it right, we need to correct it as quick as we can. All these things work to make sure we're committed to getting the mission done and the way it needs to be done. But Eisenhower recognized people do the mission. So if you're ignoring the people, it's all about the people and the mission. You hear that every time you go to a military, you hear a leader talk, people and mission, people and mission. Some people say mission first, some people say mission, people first.
And Woody would say you win with people, right?
And you win with people. It's all about the people,
Yep.
right? So Eisenhower spent more time before D-Day. He went in and literally I have a picture in my office of him standing in front of, he went to see as many men as he could that day and said, gather around. What are you worried about? What are you worried about? Well, worried about this is not working, right?
Right.
Don't worry about it. The plan's in place. Okay,
was
what else? It was amazing. And then someone gave me a picture. I'm standing there talking to troops, and I've kind of got the same hand motions as he does, and they've put these in mirror form. And I said, you guys, I'm talking to a group of maintainers. He's talking to a group that is going to go into one of the biggest wars, critical wars of our history. We
used to always talk about we needed to know what our players were thinking, what they were feeling, what was, we used to always say, treat everyone like they're hurting, because you don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know what's going on.
You don't know.
In their minds, in their hearts, and it's it is a people. That's what teams are. So as I started learning about the military at Youngstown State, the Army ROTC was down the hall from us in the stadium. So we got to go down and we studied green tab leadership and all these different things, and so the military, in my mind, really became a larger than life trainer of leaders. Well, then as I was involved more in trying to build teams, I'm thinking, you know what? Yes, I need to build my leaders, and yes, I need to show them so that they can aspire, to grow. But you know what I really need to make my focal point is the teaching of team, as opposed to simply. So as you look at the military, is there just as much time spent on what it means to be the right kind of team as there is here's your path for promotion, or you tell a young person if you want to, progress? Do you think we do a great job with both, or?
I think we function as teams very well. I think we function as teams very well because the mission drives it. The mission has to get done. The mission cannot fail. So the team, your place on that team, and you cannot let your team members down. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. I think the gaps that we have are focusing on the individual airman. So I'm looking at this from a different view, because we're trained to be a team. We're trained to do our part. We're trained to be experts in what we do, and then we're trained to execute the mission. And the only way we execute the mission is with our battle buddy. Right? I'm a flight lead. I'm a lead of a force ship. Everything's formation. Everything, even if you're not a pilot, you're in formation with your team and you're executing the team together. Not one person in our Air Force does a job by themselves. They have to do it with the team. So the gaps in that team are that individual, the fallen individual. So you've got to get to the fallen individual. And you got to go, wow, that's not you. What's going on? Come here. What's going on? Something's different. Well, this is what's happening. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Let's substitute somebody in there and let's get this fixed. So I spent my time going, why isn't this team functioning at its height? What is it? Is it a clash between two people? Fix it. Right? So you spend a lot of your time correcting the malfunction of teams. And usually it's the individual.
Sure.
And it's something that's happening within, if it's a technical side, that's easy. We can get them to where they need to be. If it's on the personal side, it's harder. And sometimes it means you're going to another job. Sometimes it means we've got the time to fix this and we're going to fix it and get you where you need to be and put you back in there.
So when we were talking a little bit leading up to this, and as I've told my staff here, I've been nervous every one of these that I've gotten into, because we've had some extraordinary people, and I'm not a TV guy. I'm a coach, and so forth. But we were talking a little bit, and you shared with me the 3 components that you thought were critical for building a team. In fact, I actually printed them off. And would you share that with because I thought these 3 were great lessons. And our goal with this podcast is to add value to people. If they can just pick a nugget or 2 or 3, and it can help make their team, their family, their company, their nation. Could you share with us the 3 that you were thinking about?
There are many, right?
Right.
But 3 that stand out for me, the first one is really allowing people to make mistakes on your team. When I was a young instructor pilot, one of my first students, you fly a departure and you turn left at Higley Road and then you get to F Peak, and it literally had an F on the side of the peak for Florence. You'd make a right. C Peak had a C on, so there was a very visual departure as you were going out there. And I was flying with one of my first students, and I thought, today he's about halfway to his check ride. His check ride will determine that he can go to the area solo. He's all by himself in a jet. He can fly around the pattern, he can get himself out to the area, he can fly all the maneuvers, the barrel rolls, the loops, all the things that we do, and get himself safely back, right? So I'm about halfway through this training. I decided to, as we were on departure, I thought, I told him I'm going to be a little more quiet. I'm going to see just where we are. Where are you? As far as, as an instructor, you're constantly talking. And there's so much going on within that airplane. You're constantly saying, okay, watch your altitude. Okay, watch your airspeed. Okay, see that over there. I want you to see that. So there's so much input happening all the time. So I told him, I said, I'm going to be a little more quiet on this one. He goes, okay. So we're on departure. We get to the point of wanting to turn, and I just sit there. I don't make any input. And he blows through the turn, and I said, hey, we really need to make a left turn now. And he goes, well, you didn't look down. And I go, what do you mean I didn't look down? He says, you always look down or you touch the stick when it was time to make that turn, and you didn't do it. And I thought, oh my gosh. I said, I got the airplane. I brought us around. I said, we're gonna go up initial. We're not gonna do a touch and go. We're gonna go up initial, and I'm gonna talk you through what you're looking for. And I want you to repeat that back to me. And he goes, okay. I said, you see that road? And he goes, yes, I see that road down there. You see that barn? Yes, I see that barn. That's your turn point, right? That's what you're looking for. He goes, oh. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. We've gotten, 6 or 7 rides under our belt, and he was waiting for me to prompt him. Because I was prompting him, little did I know I was prompting him a lot. Yeah. So I said, the next ride, I said, I'm going to talk you through a lot of this, and if you don't understand, you tell me. Got it? I said, this is a two-way conversation. He goes, okay, got it. So I would say something, he goes, no, repeat that. I didn't get that. So that opened up a whole new relationship that he and I had. He didn't want to perform badly in front of me, because you're looking up to your mentor, right? This is the person teaching me how to fly. I remember my first instructor pilot. You will remember them the rest of your life, because you're scared, and he's teaching you how to fly a jet. So it was really interesting, the relationship that we had after that, and we'd laugh about that. We would laugh about that. Yeah, I said, you would have ended up in Phoenix if I hadn't said anything. We're just laughing about it. But you got to let them make mistakes. Yeah. From then on, I said, I'm not going to touch the stick down here. I'm not going to prompt you. My head's going to be zeroed straight ahead, and you're going to take me on the next ride from start to finish. You're going to set up for the loop. You're going to do it all. And he learned more on that next flight than he said I've ever learned in my entire life, because it was all on me.
Yep.
I didn't have you to lean on. So there's a point in time, you got to let him go. You got to let him go.
We used to have that situation with our players. They were so worried about making a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'd look over the sideline.
Yeah.
Like, was I supposed to do that? Or for approval? Or
right, exactly.
And it's like, hey, stop. In fact, there were times in practice, and my coaches would get mad. We'd be like in a spring scrimmage. And you'd done so much coaching, so much fundamental, and the kids kept looking for the approval or for the next direction. I said to them, you guys go up in the press box. Get out of here. And let's let them, let's find out what they know, but let's let them make mistakes. And what do they say? The people that don't make any mistakes are the ones that aren't trying anything, right? And Yeah, that's.
John Wooden said that.
You know, I think you're right.
John
I think
Wooden
that
said
is John Wooden.
He says if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything.
Right, right. So number one is we've got to let the people on our team know that we believe in them.
Absolutely.
And that, you know what, we're all going to make mistakes, but we got to go do something.
Yeah. And I debriefed it to the instructor pilots. I said, hey, you know, here's the mistake I made. Oh my gosh. I was prompting this guy way too much. And he counted on it. Right?
Yep.
He counted on it. So, yeah, the second thing is our words. You know, we talk about actions speaking louder than words, but I think our words are so important. Your words as a coach, you knew you had to be careful with everything you said, because your words could build people up or they could tear people down. And the way they looked up to you, they may never forget that. So it's important, you know, and you can tell as a young airman, as a young person being on any kind of team, name the team. You can tell when your leader is what I call either I-centric, me, or we-centric. It's about us, by their words. You know, the I-centric folks, you know, kind of, they look at their past and they can try to continue their past. They try to be the boss, the dictator. They try to stay in control of everything because it's all about them. It's not about the team. It's not about the performance of the team. It's not about the efficiency of the team. It's not about the success of the team. It's about them. So they're afraid. They're not going to try new things. And you can spot those folks right away. The we leader comes in and says, hey, it's okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? You include them. It's inclusive. It builds people up. It's a great environment to then correct, because everyone understands I'm a part of this team. I've got a role. They're using my talents and my experience to be a part of this team. So when you go to correct someone, you go, team, gather around. Okay, here's what we saw. And it's not pointing to the person. It's pointing to the behavior.
So do they do a good job as they're training their leaders in the military, in your experiences, to helping them understand the difference between a me leader and a we leader?
We weed the I leaders out pretty fast because they weed themselves out. They're not effective.
Right.
No one's going to follow them. No one's going to follow them. So they will not get promoted. You can see that. You can see it. The people that get promoted are the ones who can bring a group of people together and get the mission done, get it done effectively, and promote the people within to understand who they are as people, what is their role within this team, and how much they're needed, how much they are needed to not only build their character, but the ones we're responsible for building the people around us when we're part of the team. We're responsible for so much.
So when you had a smaller group that you were leading, building a team, you had the time to win each heart.
Right.
I mean, you knew everything about them.
Right.
So now you go to the next level and you're counting on someone else to make sure that they're doing. Then you go to the next level, and like you said, you have all these different missions and all the different things. I learned as a college president that I would have been a lot nicer to my presidents when I was coach if I knew how many layers they had. Right?
Yeah, right.
I didn't know. All I cared about was the layer they had with the athletic department. But you know, so you're really counting on each layer. Ultimately, we've got to make sure they know we care about them, make sure we win their hearts, and number one, let them make mistakes. Number two, be very careful with our words, right? And then what was the third one we were talking about?
The third one is really understanding that each person within the team has talent. They need to be treated with dignity and respect. So it's how you treat each individual within that group. And people watch how you treat individuals. People watch if you have favorites. You cannot have favorites. You cannot. You can honor the differences in talents. You can do that all day. But you cannot have a favorite airman. You cannot do that. So it's really understanding that we have to pour out as leaders as much as we can into each individual, as you said. What's their heart about? What what makes this person click? When you understand that, you know best how to get them on the path that you think is best for them, right? And then that becomes best for the family, best for those surrounding them. So you spend a lot of time on their hearts, as I said, and trying to build the person that they were created to be. And they're not going to do it on their own. We have to help them. We have to each help each other get to where we're supposed to be. So I would spend a lot of time with my commanders. You talk about making sure I can't touch everybody in the organization and understand where they are, but my commanders can. Right. So I would get the commanders and the spouses together, and we would talk about what it means to be a good leader. And I said, you cannot be a good leader if you're not a good individual. I said, it starts with being a good individual. It starts with making right decisions. It starts with treating people with dignity and respect. It starts with controlling your emotions. Do you have any self-control? I said, once you start gaining positions of authority over people, you're not allowed to yell anymore. You're not allowed to raise your voice. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do. There's different ways of dealing with behavior issues. There's different ways of dealing with people who are not on the track you need them to be, or the team has failed in some way. There's great ways of dealing with that.
We had a motto or something we tried to live by. Mm-hmm. Raise your voice only in encouragement.
Yeah, exact. Perfect.
Hey teammates, I just want to briefly interrupt one more time to give a shout out to a great local manufacturing company, Compco, as a sponsor for our journey. We aren't going to be helping them sell much of their product of steel tank heads on this podcast. They just believe in the mission of teamwork and intentional selflessness. I've known the Smith family since my coaching days at YSU. They've been a beacon in the Youngstown area, providing great jobs and supporting our community through youth programs and local nonprofits like the United Way. The Smith family have been instrumental in backing this project from the start. Thanks to the whole Compco team for joining us sight unseen on this exciting venture. These are team-first people. Let's say one of the viewers or listeners is in a position where they have a lot of layers. Mm-hmm. What's the best way to figure out at the various layers if someone is doing a good job of mm-hmm. winning those hearts, caring genuinely about the people that they're on their team? Mm-hmm. How do you figure out how it's going down on those next
So
levels?
I would get my squadron commanders. There's a lot of squadrons in Air Mobility Command. I would get them together twice a year with their spouses. And they knew my expectations as a leader. Hey, you need to be a good leader, and this is what a good leader looks like. This is what a good leader does not look like. These are characteristics of a bad leader. These are characteristics of a good leader. So we spent time talking, like I said, about what it means to be a good person. And then I would spend time individually with the commanders. I would go visit their bases. They would hear my voice and understand what I needed from them, and the way I heard from them was to visit their units, number one, and spend time with them. So I spent a lot of time on the road. And you can spend just a few minutes with someone in a bus going from one location to another to visit airmen, and in that time you can tell, are they I-centric or we-centric? Just by the way they communicate, what they tell you, how they say it.
And you can tell by their team, too, when you see their team.
You can tell the
Right.
interaction between the team. You can tell so much. But I used a lot of my time with the squadron commanders to pull the spouses in. And I would talk about prudence. I would talk about magnanimity. I talk a lot about humility. I talk about self-control. I talk about courage. I talk about justice. So I spent time talking about virtue. I said, this is virtue. So let's talk about it. It's something we don't talk about. Mm-hmm. And when I would go deeply into each one of those, the spouses would come up afterwards and go, I need this so bad for my kids. Would you please write a book? I said, there's a lot of books out there. Here's the books that are out there that go into this. And I said, once a person is on a path of building their character and their virtue, they are the best team member out there. Right. And you know that. Yeah. You've run into them. You can take that person and you can put them in any room with any group of people. I went to a prison as a 4-star and talk to a group of inmates. My wing commander said, you have to go to this prison, see what we're doing. We're working with inmates. We're taking our troubled airmen who are on the way out the door. We're scaring them straight by sitting with these inmates. 15 guys got up there and told their stories about what choices they made that ended them there in that place. After we got done, the warden said, after we heard all their stories, the warden said, would you like to speak to the inmates? I said, awesome. So I stood up and I said, am I allowed to, they were all lined, the 15 guys were all lined up. And I said, am I allowed to put my hand on their chest and talk to them? Nope, can't touch an inmate. All right, can't touch an inmate. But I'd get it like an inch from their chest. And I said, do you know how special you are? Do you know how important you are to the people that love you? Do you know, and I'm saying all these positive things. Tears are just rolling down each one of these guys' eyes. And they go, I'm dirt, I'm nothing. I said, no, you've got it wrong. You've made really bad choices that got you standing where you're standing. But that's all behind you. It's water under the bridge. It's behind you. From here on out, you choose to love people. You choose to make a difference in another person's life. You make that choice. Make the right choice. And we're just an amazing interaction with each one of those guys. Last year, I went to the Leaven Kids Gala, which I think we'll talk about here in a second. And I was sitting there, we were all done, we raised $500,000, and I'm getting ready to walk out, and this woman comes up and she says, General Miller, I just want to tell you that I was at the prison that day when you talked to those inmates. And she says, they to this day, and it was 3 years later, to this day talk about how much General Miller loves me and how much she cares for me and how much and she said, these guys are different because of the words that I use to say, I see the goodness. You may not see or feel or think that you're great, but you are. Bad choices got you here, but that doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay. And 2 of those guys got paroled. One, they thought there's no way he's going to get paroled, and he did. So it's your words can turn things around. How you treat people on a team, and other people watch that. My aide de camp to this day, when we talk, I call him like every 6 months, check in on him. He says, I can't get that day out of my head.
Wow.
The words you used and how you just changed their lives by just caring for them. That's the power of someone who sees empathetically, who understands the greatness that is within every single person. We just don't spend time talking about it. We don't train to it. We don't grow to it. We just don't.
Have that conversation a lot with my staffs when I was coaching. They'd say, Coach, we need a little bit more time studying the film on our technique and practicing this or that. We're doing a little bit too much time, working on their whole being. And I said, I have to be honest with you. I think the harder we work on who they are as people, we'll be fine with our technique as long as we have capable, competent people. But we can have capable, competent people who are very skillful, but who aren't the right kind of people or don't think they are. Like you help those young people think they are. That's, to me, the secret of a team is everyone understanding their own value and everyone else understanding everyone else's value.
Right.
Let me shift real quick, speaking of value, and we'll get away from football teams and military for a second. What was really cool when I got to meet you, and Ellen and I got to be at your military ball, and then we got to be at your pinning of the 4-star, and it was so cool to get to know more than just the 4-star general and the things that are important to you. And your work with Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity, I think it's called. And what was cool, could you tell the viewers a little bit about, now here you are, this is the way I remember it, you're working at the Pentagon, living in D.C., but where you decided to use your own time was with the Missionaries of Charity. So please share a little bit about that.
I started to go there as I was pinning on my 2nd star, and I'd always wanted to work with Mother Teresa's sisters. I wanted to go to India. it just wasn't working out. And I'm just like, what is the issue? I really want to work with the sisters. And something just said, hey, they're in D.C., look them up. So I got on the phone and I looked them up. Oh my gosh, they're in D.C. So I called right away, and sister goes, hey, she's Indian, and she says, yes, come tomorrow. You can help tomorrow. Come tomorrow. So I showed up on a Sunday, and that place changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. So it got to a point where every weekend, it started out just on Sundays. I would come about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I would get the residents. We had about 30 men that we brought in off the streets, homeless, and then about 12 women that we brought in off the streets, and then other folks who were just totally destitute and their families couldn't take care of them, we brought them in. And the sisters and volunteers and co-workers, we took care of them. So on Sundays I would do that. We would go to Mass at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was just wonderful serving them, taking care of them. And it got to a point where on Fridays I would leave the Pentagon at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd go to the Gift of Peace, which is what Mother Teresa named the building. It's about 4 miles from the Pentagon. And I wouldn't leave till Sunday at like 8 p.m. at night. And I'd stay with the sisters all weekend. You know, you talk about, what we've been talking about is formation of teams, formation of people as individuals. And that for me was a revolutionary formation of my life, to understand that, you know, we're here to serve. We're not here to be served. We're here to serve. And I love serving. I went to Calcutta, took my youngest brother to Calcutta with me. We're going back next year. It's just being with the poorest of the poor. They teach us so much. And it's just amazing to be a part of that. It's incredible.
And that team that does all that service.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be amazing.
It's amazing.
Right?
They very little planning happens. It's all the will of God. So, you know, I go into this place and I'm thinking, okay, well, sister goes, we need to have a cookout tomorrow. Great, I'll go. I'm logistically building all this thing in my head. This is easy. We'll get this done. And she says, no, that's not how we do it. Okay. And you literally had to leave all your planning skills at the door. You literally turned everything over to the Lord. I'd go into the Pentagon on that Monday, and people wouldn't talk about, you know, a bombing that happened over the weekend, or, you know, something related to what we're doing in the military. They'd go, how was your time with the sisters? How was your time? Because I'd tell stories about going on the streets with the sisters. Two Capuchin brothers, 2 sisters, 2 of us volunteers going to the homeless on the streets of D.C. And the wonderful experiences that we have just doing that. Gosh, climbing in a tent with them, to be with the homeless. It's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. You know, the chief tells, General Goldfein told this one story at my promotion, actually. He said that I was coming back from testimony, and congressional testimony, and as we're driving back to the Pentagon, I said, hey, slip down this street over here by the CNN building. I'm going to see if my folks are out there homeless.
My folks.
So we pulled up, sure shooting. I got out of the van and I'm like, John. He said, Maryanne, is that you? I'm standing there in this uniform, you know, on the streets. What are you doing? He had no idea. Well, I didn't know that. So the next Saturday I saw him. He goes, I didn't know. He's, you know, being a smart aleck, he's saluting and doing all those kinds of things, telling everybody else, Maryanne's a 4-star general, you know. But it was just, they're just incredible people, and that's what I would teach my airmen. We are all the same. Choices got you to where you are. Choices got me to where I am. For the homeless, a lot of it is financial devastation. Financial devastation or mental illness, right? Most of those, they can't control either one of them in many cases. So it's, you know, it's all about, we're all the same. We're here to help each other. So just that impact of being with the sisters rubbed off so much on everyone that I was around. It was a different conversation that we would have all the time. It was
a humbling one.
Humbling one.
Right.
Humbling one. Yeah. I mean, we communicated differently. Once people knew that, it opens up worlds of caring, and it just opens up your entire world to everything. You want to do everything right. Everything that you do, you want to do for someone else.
So that first team you were on, which was your family, really gave you a chance to learn and taught you. So now we're fast forward retired military, retired 4-star general. Leaven Kids. As I think about the little bit you've told me about the initiative, is you're working with kids 5 to 10 years old who may not have had the blessing of a team to learn the model of that Maryanne Miller did, right? So share with the listeners and the viewers what Leaven Kids is about.
Leaven means to permeate and modify something for the better. It means to raise it up, right? So we named this nonprofit Leaven Kids because we go into, we're like Mother Teresa, we will go to you. You know, you don't have to come to us. We're coming to you. Wherever you are, whatever gutter from Mother Teresa in India, wherever you are, we're coming to you and we're there to help you. So we go into Section 8 apartment complexes, you know, violent, windows broken out, bullet holes in windows and in doors. We go into those places and we take the precious 5 to 10-year-olds, and when they get off that bus in their apartment complex, we don't let them go home yet. We say, no, come over here. And they go to what the kids call little school. So we've taken over a section of either an apartment in some cases, or we've taken over the community center in the little apartment, and usually it's a disaster. Usually there's broken appliances. I mean, these places are a disaster, right? No one puts money into these places. So we go in, we fix it all up, we make it the brightest part of their life when they walk into that room. And we give them their own chair, and we give them a smart desk where they can write on it and erase. We give them stuff that's theirs. And then we put them in a group and say, this is your team. These are the ones you take care of. And they've learned to take care of each other just because of the struggles they have in the doors that behind the doors that they live. So we take these kids, we're a Christian organization, we get them right away and we sit with them and we understand what each child needs depending on, so we close the gap on their homework. That site director will call the school and understand what each of the child needs for their homework that day. So when that kid comes off that bus, they grab their folder, they sit down, it's there. It's there. So we're trying to close the gap to make them educated because many of them can't read. And if you can't read by the time you're 3,
that's right.
Yeah, you don't have a chance.
No,
you're going to end up in the prison like those guys. So we're trying to alleviate all the problems in 4C and help these kids get to a better place, a better starting point in life when they get to be 10 years old. So we've got them from 5 to 10. Those are the most precious years. Those are the years that the gangs get them.
Yeah.
The gangs stand out there and you can make $100, little boy, if you go do this for me. So we stop that, right? We pull the police in. So the police come and they sit with the kids and we build relationships with the parents and the police. We bring the parents in so they understand, hey, when your child starts going astray, reach out to Officer Green and you know him. He can have that conversation with them. We bring the mayor in. We insist that the mayor comes and sits. And we have 26 locations in California. Wow. And we have one in San Antonio, and we're expanding to another one in San Antonio, Sousa. San Antonio is going to be our next big expansion point. We service over 900 children. And we love them. Our first requirement is to love them first, never judge them, and help them through a lot of things. We've helped families through a lot of things.
Well, and the same 3 things are important.
Yeah.
Let them make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Words are important.
Absolutely.
What those young people,
right.
And
right.
Every one of them is important.
Absolutely.
Lift them up one by one.
One by one. So it's, the most precious work I've done.
Wow.
Yeah. We're changing generations. We're not just changing one child. We're changing what happens behind that door. When that child comes back through that door and feels loved and is making progress in school, that parent even though that parent has many struggles themselves, maybe more than what the child does,
they'll feel it.
They'll feel it.
Yeah.
And it begins to transform. It transforms. We start with the child, then it moves to the family, then it moves to their neighborhood, and then it moves to the community. So, the mayor of San Antonio, Mayor Nuremberg, loves this. He talks about it all the time. He goes, let's expand. No, we expand back to the team. We expand when we get the right site director. we will not expand this until we get the right person that walks through the door, that understands, that is a well-rounded, caring, loving, well put together person who understands the challenge they have ahead of them.
That's awesome.
Because it's not easy.
Well, it's all about the team family. How about this for a Memorial Day? What a blessing we've had to spend this time with General Maryanne Miller, and from the first day I met her, I thought, man, there's something about this person, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and it's so important that we talk about team and the importance of everybody every day. We have to talk about it every day, and you made this Memorial Day special, and for all the families out there that have sacrificed and got someone, whether it might not be your parent, it might be your grandparent, it might be someone you know from your community, but make sure that this Memorial Day is one that you'll remember. It's one I'll remember, thanks to General Miller. Until the next time, it's all about the team.